Hi, my name is Martin Perhiniak, and this presentation is going to be about creating creative compositions in Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. So the whole seminar is going to be showing you how quickly and easily you can create amazing and very engaging designs in these applications and how well they are all integrated. So we are going to create a magazine cover in InDesign with the help of Photoshop to create a mask for this person in the magazine cover. Then we are going to also create an album cover, mainly using Photoshop. And then we will also use a scanned illustration, these elements, which you can see at the moment, and turn it into a repeated seamless pattern, which is completely turned into vectors in Illustrator. So we will trace it first, have everything created in vectors, and once we have that, we will turn that into a seamless repeated pattern. So let's have a look at these examples and see how all these applications work hand in hand. So I'm just going to go back to the files and I will start with the magazine cover. So let me open up the InDesign file which I prepared, and I can show you this is the final result. So this is what we are going to achieve. And I'm going to open my layers panel so you can see exactly how my layer structure is. So here we have, first of all, text, which holds most of the text on the cover. Now that's on top, so anything behind that will be under the text. Then we have graphics. On the graphics layer, I actually don't have anything, so we can even delete that if we want. But to be honest, it would be better to have this little sticker on the graphics layer. So I can just move that onto there. Now you can see we place that on the graphics layer. If we turn these both off, then we will have still 3 layers left. We have the image at the bottom, then a layer called behind, and another layer called actor. Now let me turn off the locking on these, and let's have a look what happens if I turn off the visibility of actor. Now you can see that it will still keep the image in the whole composition, but now we will have the text on top of it. And that text comes from the behind layer. So we can even call this layer, I'm just going to call it behind, and I call it title and heading. So we know that on that layer we have the heading and the title, and we have the image at the bottom. So if I turn this off, then we can just simply see the image. If I turn off that as well, then there's nothing. So you can see that there's 2 versions of the same image, one on the image layer and another one on the actor layer. This is the typical workflow that they use for magazine covers when they want to elevate the person from the image and make it look like that the text is behind it, but still in front of the background. So that creates a really cool play with depth in the design. And that's what we are going to do here as well. But let me first of all delete the images. So I'm just going to delete that PSD from the actor layer, and I'm also going to delete this image from the image layer, and I can turn back everything else. So at the moment we don't see anything, but let me just create a rectangle here using the rectangle tool. I'm just going to fill in the whole page on the image layer with a rectangle, and let me change the color of this to black. I'm just going to actually use black as my fill color on this rectangle. So as you can see, everything is there. Now we're just missing the image. So let's place that image in here. I'm going to keep this rectangle selected, go back to bridge, and from bridge I can find the image easily. Right click on that, choose place, and choose in InDesign. And because I had that rectangle selected, it automatically pastes the image into the rectangle. But at the moment, as you can see, it doesn't completely fill in the rectangle. So what I'm going to do is to select the rectangle and choose fill frame proportionally. So that's exactly what I wanted. Maybe I want to move the person a little bit to the left. So I just click in the center on the content grabber, and I just press the left arrow a couple of times on my keyboard. I'm just going to zoom a little bit closer because as I can see, the frame is not big enough, so it didn't fill in completely the top. Now I'm just going to again choose fill frame proportionally and move it slightly to the left. So it's just to make sure that the whole image fills in completely the edges of the cover as well. Now that we have this already, we can now go back to Bridge and open up the image in Photoshop. So I'm just going to double click on it, and this is the image in Photoshop. Now, to be able to separate the person from the background, we will have to make a selection first. And the easiest way in this case is to use the quick selection tool. It's a brush, so you can always make the size of your brush bigger or smaller by using the square bracket keys on the keyboard. And then just simply draw around the background like this. And if you see details that you didn't want to select for the separation, just hold down Alt and draw over those details once again with this quick selection tool, and then we will have a quite good selection there. Now, I want to actually invert this selection because I want to keep the person visible. So I'm going to go to Select, choose Inverse, and then click on the mask icon here at the bottom of the Layers panel. So Add Mask. Once I click on that, it turns it into a mask, and it looks really good. So all we need to do is to simply save this. I'm just going to choose File, Save, and now it's saved as a PSD file. So if we come back here, we can see that actually it would have been better to keep the original file there as well, because we will need that. But it's not that big of a problem to have it like this, because what we can do is to create a new layer, duplicate this layer, and delete the mask on the bottom one. So I right click on it, choose Delete Layer Mask, and I'm just going to call this layer Original, and the one on top I'm going to call Masked, like that. So I save it again, go back to InDesign, and in InDesign, if I go to the links, I should have a warning here saying that this image has been modified. So if I double click on it, then it will update with the new PSD. And because we have two versions, just showing it to you, because we have two layers, one the masked version and the original. Once they both turned on, it looks like nothing happened. But now comes the tricky part, and this is the most important part of the whole tutorial. What I'm going to do now is to select this whole image, the whole frame, copy it. So I go to Edit, Copy, and then select the Behind, Title, and Heading layer. No, actually, sorry, I select the Actor layer, because that's where I want the actor to come out of the original frame. So I'm just going to choose Actor layer and choose Edit, Paste in Place. Now at the moment, I just duplicated the whole image with its background, so it doesn't show the title and the heading, because now I covered them up completely. The graphics and the text will show because they are on top of everything else, the text and graphics layer, but the behind details, the title and the heading won't be visible, because this actor PSD file has still the background visible. So what I'm going to do now is select that image, right click here and choose Object Layer Options. Once I go into there, I can see I have both the masked and original layers on. So to be able to see the masking, I will have to turn off the original layers visibility and then click OK. And just one additional thing I have to make sure, because I will have transparency in this object or frame, I will have to make sure that there's no fill color applied to this rectangle or frame. So if I choose none on the fill color, then we will be able to see the effect we wanted to see. So now we can see nicely the heading and the title as well. And maybe as a last step, I can just select this version, the masked out version, and I can add a drop shadow under Effects. I choose drop shadow, and I just turn on preview, and we can see how it looks. Let's have a look before and after. You can see the shadow will appear there, but we can change the angle as well, keep it more closer, and we can make the bigger distance, or we can make the size bigger. It will blur it out a little bit more. So after this point, it's quite easy to set up the shadow the way you want it to. And it's a live effect, so you can change it at any time. So again, let's have a look before and after. This is how we managed to extract the person and make it look like he's in front of the title and the heading. So a bit of use from Photoshop for the masking and setting up the layers, but then everything else we did here in InDesign. So you can see again the integration between these two applications. You have the object layer options in which you can actually access directly the Photoshop layers inside InDesign. So that is a great feature, and of course then you can combine these advantages with InDesign's features and create layers, and then it's ready to go. Your magazine cover is ready to go. So let's go back to Bridge, and now that we finished this example, let's get into the pattern design in Illustrator. So I'm just going to select this. First of all, I go to Illustrator and choose File, New, and I'm going to create a new landscape format document. And then I'm going to go back to Bridge, right click on this image, place, and in this case, now InDesign, we will place it into Illustrator. So there's the scanned image. We have it in Illustrator now. And what I'm going to do after this is to, first of all, trace this image. Now, if you just simply click on Image Trace, that will turn it into a black and white trace, which is great for like line art. But most of the time, it's better to click on this little drop down and choose whichever color option you want. So in this case, we have flat colors, which is great for vector illustration. And I think it's probably around 10 to 12 colors what we need here. So I'm just going to choose 16 colors. So once I choose that, Illustrator will do everything. So it will do the vectorization of the whole image. And as you can see, it did a really good job. So we can check before and after. We can see source image, that was the original image, and this is the tracing result. So once again, before the pixel version and after the vector version. So tracing is great because we won't have any pixel detail left. We will only have these nice sharp vector details. So once again, the original one was a pixel image, which if we look at it from this close, you can see how pixelated it is. But once we choose tracing result, it looks quite good. Now, to be able to make any changes to this, the best thing to do is to click on Expand. So once you click on Expand, it will expand the whole illustration. Now, after this, what I want is to, first of all, get rid of any white details. Most of the time, that's something you don't want in your vectorized version. So for that, I double click on the Magic Wand tool and I check if the fill color tolerance is set to 1. That's exactly what I want. So if it's set up that way, I can just click on the white background of this illustration, which will select everything that was white here. So I can then delete them. Pressing backspace, you can delete them. Now, there's also another color which I think is unnecessary, and these little details are just the stains from the paper probably. So I just selected them as well and delete those colors as well. Let's have a look before and after. Yeah, it looks much better already. So it cleaned up all those little details as well. Now, after this point, what I'm going to do is to use the lasso tool, which you can select with pressing Q on the keyboard. And I am just going to draw a selection around this first element, and then press Command G or Control G on PC, which will turn this into a group. I'm going to repeat the same step with this TP here and drag it here. Command G puts it together. And I would be able to continue this and do it with all these elements. And that's what I normally do when I create patterns. So once I have them all ready, then I can turn them into the seamless pattern. So again, group. So now we have 3 of the TPs. And then we can also turn these ones, the small ones, into another group. Let's just try to make a good selection. There's another group there. These can be good for filling in space. So let's turn that also into a group. Then we can also use the trees as another group like that, and then maybe the arrows can work in this illustration as another group, and then maybe here this one at the bottom, this illustration, this is also quite nice. So let me just make a selection of that, and as you can see, I selected something I didn't want, so I hold down Alt and make a selection around that part. So now I'm going to press Command G again, and then I can move this whole group on the top as well. So let me just go into it and drag it up. By the way, everything is still inside one group. So if I go into the layers, I can see that there is one big group which I can ungroup. So I can go either to object and choose ungroup, or press Command Shift G or Control Shift G on PC. And that's much easier then, because now we can see that all these elements are completely separate, apart from the ones that we already turned into groups. So they are easy to select, while these other elements are now completely separated. So maybe one more thing that I'm going to select, just using the selection tool, are these elements, and just group them also together, pressing Control or Command G. And I think that will be enough. So now I'm going to use the artboard tool. That's Shift O, the shortcut, or you can select it from the toolbar. It's here at the bottom. That's the artboard tool. And with that, I just drew a new artboard and put everything that I didn't use so far, place it there, just so I know that these are not used in my design at the moment. And to be honest, from these TPs, I will probably use only 2, and I will probably use these 2 here. So I just place these other 2 TPs here as well for now. Now that we have everything selected, let me just combine them or put them next to each other a little bit more. So just the space will be filled in with them a bit better. So something like that. And then I select everything together and go to Object Pattern and choose Make. So Object Pattern Make. I can click on Don't Show again because I don't need to see this warning. Whenever you create a pattern, it automatically is created as a swatch, which you can always change. I mean, if you want to make edits to your pattern, you just double click on it in the swatches panel, and then it opens up and you can do your edits. So you can see it already created a grid and this nice seamless pattern from these elements. But what we can do is to change the grid itself. So with this pattern tile tool here in the patterns options, you can extend the area which is used for the pattern, or you can reduce it, and then you will start to see overlapping details. Now, this is very important, so it's important to know what's happening here. Obviously, the bigger the tile will be, the more space you will have to put your design, but the more gaps you will get as well. And most important thing about pattern design is that you want to make sure people won't be able to see the edges. So you want to hide the edges. You don't want them to see where your pattern is repeated. So first of all, what you can do is to change the tile type from grid to brick by row, which shifts a bit the rows, or you can choose brick by column, which will shift the column, so vertical shift between each column. And you can of course change the brick offset as well, but then you can also choose hex by column or hex by row, which is also a great way to just randomize a bit your pattern and make it a bit more difficult to see where it's repeated. So let me just stick to grid for now, or maybe one of these brick by row, for example. And then I'm going to select one of these items, maybe this TP, and I'm going to make it bigger. And let's see how it's going to be repeated all around. So that looks quite good. Now, let me make this one a little bit bigger as well. I'm just going to make that element bigger and drag it all the way to the right side. And then that is also repeated already. Maybe we should use brick by column now that I can see this. It might be a little bit better, the randomizing the pattern itself that way. I just move that arrow to the right. I can make these little decorative elements a bit bigger, move them on the other side, and maybe move this TP a bit further down, move the other TPs up, something like that, and then just turn this a little bit to the side. And we can also have the other TP turned a bit to the left side, just to have a bit of more playful pattern. Now, this looks already quite good, but what we can do is always save this swatch and then create another swatch with the same pattern, but with different colors. So how do we do that? First of all, we click on Done, and then we can even create a new artboard for this. I'm just going to create a smaller artboard for the elements that we used, like that. I can put it here, and now I'm drawing another artboard, and on this artboard I will draw a rectangle. So there's the rectangle, and then using the swatches, I'm going to change the fill color of this to the pattern that we just created. So that looks already quite good. But let's say I would like to have a different version of this. So using the artboard tool, I hold down Alt and click and drag to create a duplicate. Now, I double click on the swatch itself to go back to edit the swatch or this pattern. But before we are going to exit from the pattern editor, we are going to click on Save a Copy instead of clicking on Done. So all our changes will be saved and stored in a separate second pattern swatch. So how do we change the colors? Well, you can press Command A or Control A to select everything. And the easiest and fastest way to change all the colors in your designs is by using the Recolor Artwork option here on the top. So I click on that. So Recolor Artwork. And as you can see here, we have a list of all the colors used in our design. And we can also go to Edit and then make changes there, either individually each color. As you can see, if I move this around, a couple of the colors change already in the design. But what's even better is that we can click on the chain here to link the harmony colors, and then now all the colors will be tied together, so no matter where we move, they will change together. And to be honest, I actually really like these brown and blue, pale purple, blue colors. So I can either save it as a Recolor Artwork color swatch group by clicking on this icon here, which is also a good option. But once we click on OK, we can just simply click on Save a Copy, and we can name this pattern or just simply click on OK. And now you will see that you have two swatches with the same pattern but with different colors. So it's a copy. So I can now click on Cancel because we saved the copy and we don't want to update our new or the original swatch. So click on Cancel, and then you can see on this new rectangle we have the new swatch applied, while on the other one we have the original one. So we can always check before and after, changing the swatch, or select some default swatch, and we can see how it works. So we can see them side by side, the two different color variations of our seamless pattern designs. So you can see how quickly from a sketch we ended up having a great seamless vector pattern. And now let me show you the last example. So I go back to Bridge and we will do this in Photoshop, the album cover. So once again, I show you the final result. We won't get to the same result. I just show you the basic technique that I use for this effect and see how easy and quick again it is in Photoshop to create effects like this. So I'm just going to open up the image in Photoshop. I can close the other image there. And I am going to first of all draw a triangle. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool or the object shape tools, but I'm going to select the polygon tool and make sure that the sides are set to 3. Then I'm just going to hold down Shift and draw a triangle here somewhere on the top. That looks good. Now I'm going to use the free transform tool, and I am going to move this a little bit to this to the right side. So something like that. Let me just double check. Maybe I put a guide here so I can just know exactly how far I need to move it. And then I press Enter. Now, the reason why I did this is because if I go to the Edit Transform options, I can see Transform again, which is Command-Shift-T. If I just press that simply, it's going to move the triangle without duplicating it. But what I can do is to use the shortcut together with holding down Alt. So Command-Alt-Shift-T or Control-Alt-Shift-T on PC, and that will duplicate and move the item. So I can very quickly and easily create a pattern from it. So there you go, there's like a nice little pattern. And the cool thing in Photoshop is that if you combine shape layers, as you can see I have loads of them, by using the merge option, which is Control E or Command E, that will still keep them vectors, so it won't rasterize them. They are still vectors, but now they are all in one layer. Now as I can see, I probably by by just by accident, I moved it also a little bit down the triangles, so it has a slight angle, which is not a problem. It's just makes it a bit more interesting, I guess. But if I mind it, I can always turn them around and try to even it out, the angle of these triangles. So I'm just going to keep it something like that. And now another way to quickly duplicate all this is to hold down Alt and drag with the move tool, and then I can move them a little bit on an angle, maybe something like that, or we can keep it the same as it was before. Merge these two together again, Alt click and drag down, again merge, Alt click and drag down, and the more you have, the faster it is to duplicate. There it is, duplicate and merge them together with Command or Control E. And then here I'm just going to make them a little bit bigger so they fill in completely the area. Okay, now we can even delete a couple of these shapes. Probably those were unnecessary. And to be honest, I probably need to make it a little bit smaller, so just we can see a little bit more on the right side, and I can move it a bit to the left. So there we have all our rectangles, or sorry, triangles. And we can do a lot of things with these. Once we have this grid, we can change their blend mode and choose something. Depending on what color we use, it will create a different effect. At the moment I'm using overlay, but I can change the color of this layer by double clicking on it, and I can go up to pick any different color. That color is quite nice, it works quite well with the image, but I can then change the effect itself depending on which blend mode I choose. Another thing you can do with these shapes is that you duplicate the original image and put the duplicate on top of the shape layer, and then hold down Alt and click between the two layers to create a clipping between them. Now the clipping will already create an interesting effect because we have a blend mode on that vector shape layer. But if you want to make it even more interesting, then select the layer itself and you can make it either bigger or smaller, and you will start to see like a shattered glass effect. So you can see already how cool it looks. The more bigger it gets, the more interesting it looks. But to be honest, I actually prefer to keep it quite close to the original, and that really creates that interesting, almost three-dimensional effect. So you can see without these layers, the original, and with these layers, the effect itself. And then we can always go back to the layer with the effect, and we can change the blend modes around. You can also use Shift plus and minus to quickly toggle through all the blend modes. And you can see we'll find lots of interesting effects here, but I actually prefer the more subtle ones, although even in normal it looks quite interesting. So this is the normal blend mode. Already looks quite interesting. And by the way, if you want to make sure, for example, that the model's head doesn't get broken up, then you just add the mask on that layer, and you are going to use soft edge brush with black color and just draw over the details you want to maintain. So that is the way I created the effect, and as you can see, I just used triangles all around. I used some bigger triangles, and it's essentially the same technique to create that kaleidoscope effect, which I have already started here in Photoshop. So that's all I wanted to show you, and I hope you found this presentation useful. So as you can see, once again, we use Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign to create these engaging compositions. Thanks a lot for your attention.